Hi, I'm Kate Kelly, Senior Vice President of Partnerships for the Lilly Ledbetter Social Action Campaign and Head of Partnerships for Fyli. It is my sincere honor to welcome the next two women who will be enjoying an incredible conversation about fair pay and how women have gotten to this point and how much further we have to go. We are going to be joined by Shelley Zalis, CEO of the Female Quotient, and Lilly Ledbetter, namesake of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act, which was the first piece of legislation that Obama signed into law as president. Shelley Zalis, known as the Chief Troublemaker, is a pioneer for online research, movement leader, and champion of gender equality. She is an internationally renowned entrepreneur, speaker, mentor, and founder and CEO of the Female Quotient. Zalis rewrites the rules and innovates solutions to impact real change. In 2000, she left the corporate world to found OTX, Online Testing Exchange, which became one of the fastest growing research companies in the world. She sold OTX to Ipsos in 2010 and then led global innovation in more than 80 countries at Ipsos OTX. Today, through the Female Quotient, Zalis is advancing gender equality across industries and career levels. A firm believer in giving back with generosity, her legacy is to tap into the power of collaboration to transform workplace culture so that all people feel like they belong. Zalis authors a Forbes column that provides advice for women in middle management who are looking to rise up into leadership positions. She is the co-founder of See Her, a movement led by the Association of National Advertisers to increase the accurate portrayal of women and girls in advertising and media. She is on the board of directors for Makers and ColorCom. A firm believer in giving back with generosity, Zalis is not only a mentor to women around the world, but also provides time and resources to empowering girls globally. She has been given the awards of the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Global Marketing Leadership Award, ARF Great Minds in Innovation Award, AWNY's Game Changer Award, and the Matrix Award. Shelley, we're so grateful to have you join us. Lilly Ledbetter was born in a house with no running water or electricity in the small town of Possum Trot, Alabama. She knew that she was destined for something more, and in 1979, with two young children at home and over the initial objections of her husband, Charles, Lilly applied for her dream job at the Goodyear Tire Factory. Even though the only women she'd seen there were secretaries in the front offices where she submitted her application, she got the job. One of the first women hired at the management level. Though she faced daily gender prejudice and sexual harassment, Lilly pressed onward, believing that eventually things would change. Until 19 years after her first day at Goodyear, Lilly received an anonymous note revealing that she was making thousands less per year than the men in her position. Devastated, she filed a sexual discrimination case against Goodyear, which she won, and then heartbreakingly lost on appeal. Over the next 8 years, her case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, where she lost again. The court ruled that she should have filed the suit within 180 days of her first unequal paycheck, despite the fact that she had no way of knowing that she was being paid unfairly all of those years. In a dramatic moment, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg read her dissent from the bench, urging Lilly to fight back, and fight Lilly did, becoming the namesake of Barack Obama's first official piece of legislation as president. Today, she is a tireless advocate for change, traveling the country to urge women and minorities to claim their civil rights. I am so honored and privileged and grateful to introduce Shelley Zalis and Lilly Ledbetter. Thank you.
Wow, that was just your bio, your background, Lilly, is so inspiring, especially because you had to find that voice and that confidence from within to push forward. This is such a tremendous honor for me to have this conversation with you. Truly an icon, leaving a legacy of change for so many of us. And most importantly, showing us how important using our voice and standing up and standing out and standing together on equality and what really matters. And so that introduction was so strong. First, hello and welcome. So happy to have you here today with us, especially on International Women's Day. What a tremendous honor. So welcome.
What an honor for me to be here. Thank you for having me. And I do appreciate this opportunity to work with you some today and to get to know you, because your background is very impressive as well, because you've been helping people, young women and their families along the way. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I think we're grateful for each other. And, you know, one of the things I always say is 1 + 1 is 11. We bring different parts to what we are doing to truly activate change. And that is what this conversation is really all about. And so Kate did such a beautiful introduction. You grew up in Possum Trot, Alabama. Could you possibly ever have imagined being where you are today, looking back to how you grew up then?
Not really, because it was so out of my reach in those days to have those big dreams, because back in those days, and I tell people I'm very ancient because there were no TVs. We did not get any papers. We did not get any magazines at my home. So I had no way of knowing really what the outside world was really a lot like. But I knew one thing, that when my mother had me working in that garden so early in the morning, working on those vegetables all day to preserve them for our livelihood for the winter, and picking cotton for my grandfather to make a little extra money to get a new pair of shoes, I knew one thing: I was not going to live in the farm life all my life, because that was not for me.
But when you looked around, were there any women working other than on farms and in their homes and as primary caregivers and taking care of the family? Did you have any role models around you?
Not in those days. The closest I had in those days, we had friends that she and her husband ran the Seaboard Railroad station in Piedmont, Alabama. And that was the closest thing that I saw a female actually working and getting paid for it. Was she had a small office job for her husband in that railroad operation.
So you're now raising a family, and what gave you the push to be a working mom, number one, in a community where that was unheard of? And then secondly, to go to the Goodyear tire plant, because that is where you really built your career.
It is, because that was the opportunity I felt like that would give me the most opportunity for me to earn the kind of money that I expected to earn, and I felt that I was entitled to, because I had watched President Kennedy when he signed equal pay law. And then I watched Johnson in 1964 when he signed Title VII, that I knew I had the right benefits, that I was entitled to those things. And actually, when I started applying at Goodyear, I was actually working for the H&R Block Company, managing 16 locations. But it was always sort of iffy on how your salary was. And then Goodyear in Gadsden, Alabama, they built a radial division to their plant. And there was a big article in Business Week magazine, and they interviewed the company, and the company had stated that they wanted to hire women, place women in management positions, and they would have a right to participate in the management of the company. So I knew then that I wanted a job at Goodyear, and I filled out an application. I sent my resume in, and it took a long process, about 8 months, for them to make a decision to hire me. And then I was hired February 5th, 1979.
I mean, this journey is so incredible. I have to just ask you about the moment, that first moment you walked into the Goodyear tire plant. Tell me what the reaction was. Do you remember that moment when you walked in that front door of the Goodyear tire plant as Lilly Ledbetter? What did you feel, and what were the silent looks that were probably piercing?
I really wondered if I should be there or not, because of the you can just imagine in a tire manufacturing of the different smells of the hot rubber being cured, or the tires being produced, or the rubber even being mixed up in the banberries and processed out to make the tires. But there was so much involved. But I walked in and I knew that radial tires at that point in time was a way of the future. And that would give me a good opportunity that I was planning to work there at least 25 years to build my retirement and have a very good one with their opportunity of getting overtime and getting overtime pay. I knew that I just could see that the limits were, there was just none. I could just earn as much as I could. And that would help educate my son and my daughter, and it would help buy the things that they had needed and done without for so many years.
How did your children, seeing you as a working mother in a male-dominated industry, how did they feel growing up? Were they so proud of you, knowing that you were breaking barriers of all kinds?
They were very proud. In fact, the weekend I got the notice that Goodyear was making me the offer. They went out, the two of them, it was near the holidays, December, Christmas, and they bought a big rubber blimp and blowed it up and had it hanging over the Christmas tree that year. So they were excited, and we had struggled, and it was so hard to get by and to be able to buy the things that they needed and to pay all of the bills and the mortgage. So they supported me. We chipped in and we all did housework. They had their chores and they helped carry the load at home to help make it easier.
Well, I mean, and also you were so progressive then, and you probably didn't even know it, because today we say that shared responsibility at home leads to double income opportunity in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And so I know that you have an amazing you had an amazing supportive partner, Charles, that helped you raise your family. How did he feel about you working?
Oh, he was thrilled too. He hadn't been in the earlier years, but I separated my money out of his bank account and put it in a separate one. And so he learned how critical my income was to the family. And so he helped me from that day forward. He did whatever. He would ask me, what can he do? And at home, he would even wash the clothes. And he washed mine even. But when he washed an ink pen and ruined all my suits, I said, nope, I'll do my own laundry. That's it. But,
thank you, but no thank you.
We had our uh-ohs too, but it was a learning process, and the kids were really good. They cleaned their room, they shared a bathroom, they cleaned it. So it was, they would cook occasionally. They were, like 10, 11 about that time. And and they had been well trained at home. I stayed at home until they started to school, and then I had to get a job.
It's a remarkable journey, because I always say the rules of the workplace were written over 100 years ago by men for men, and it really didn't work for especially primary caregivers, which by default are still women, and leadership by default still men. So you walk into the Goodyear tire plant, you are a working mom of 2 children, you have an amazing partner at home helping you share the responsibility. How did you deal with 20 years in a very male-dominated field? Like, what were your experiences? Did you feel bias and barriers throughout your career at Goodyear starting out?
Yes, it was very, very difficult. In fact, a lot of my peers, the men that was in the same position I was in, they would cuss me a whole string of cuss words and tell me that I'd never make it, and why in HE so-and-so was I doing in that plant, taking a man's job. And I'd have to explain to them that this is not a man's job. This is a job. And I suited, and I met the qualifications and the experience and the background, and I can do anything that any of you men can do. So that's why I've got the job. And 2, equal pay law in Title 7 says I'm entitled. When they got too bad with it, they just said, oh, they hired you because you're female. I said, that's probably right. But I said, I'll tell you what, I'll stay and prove myself. And I worked awfully hard. And actually, when the they had so much overtime during those first years. And so when the union guys would decline all of the overtime, if it was something that I could do, I would accept the overtime and make some extra money. And so when they saw me doing some of the jobs, the union men, and my hands was cut from wrapping beads because it's wires, and I didn't know how to wrap my fingers and how to protect my hands. And they would take the time to go get the tape, bring the gloves, and show me how to protect my hands. And I earned their respect because it was a union company, and I earned the respect of the union men and women, few that was working. And that's what it took, because I would work, I would get dirty, and I didn't mind pushing to the last push.
Well, it was also really incredible when we think about the masculine and the feminine. The masculine, very linear, aggressive, assertive, one step at a time. And women, we are the emotive, nurturing, compassionate, passionate, but we also contextualize and look at the big picture, even if it's a couple extra steps. And you saw the opportunity in overtime to work and put your time in and bring that value, which also gave you this reputation and the respect of others around you, which is really incredible. And then the day comes. Tell us about the day where you get the infamous note that you find out you are paid so much less for the same work that the men are doing. What was that moment?
Well, I worked a night shift, so I worked the 7 at night until 7 in the morning. And I would get to work, and usually I'd get there an hour early because I always had directions in the day-night book. I'd have directions on the computer. I would also have mail in my box. So I pulled the mail out as I was checking on the computer and started looking at it, and out fell this note. It was a torn fourth of a sheet of paper, and it had my name and 3 men. We 4 had the exact same job, not indifferent, just a different shift, because the factory ran 7 nights, 7 days, continuous operations. So to run those shifts, it took 4 managers to keep them all going. And so we each had the same job, nothing different. And when I saw the difference in my base pay and theirs, it just devastated me. I was just sick to my stomach, because the first thing I thought about was 19 years I've worked here so underpaid. And then my overtime. Oh my gosh, my overtime is so way down. I have been so shortchanged in my working. I just couldn't believe it, because they were 40% more than I was making. And when you start doing time and half and double and triple, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And I just was devastated. I thought, I do not know how I'll get through this night and get 12 hours behind me. But I couldn't afford to leave. I couldn't afford to go home, because I still had mortgage payments. I still had 2 kids in college. There were still the car payments and the livelihood and all of the other expenses. I couldn't quit. I couldn't leave. I had to see it through. But in the night, it occurred to me during my shift, my retirement is based on what I'm earning. My contributory retirement was a percentage, matched by a percentage from Goodyear, and my 401k, and someday my Social Security. I just couldn't let it go. It just killed me when I thought about how much I had been shortchanged, me and my family, not because I wouldn't work, but simply because I had been mistreated. But that company, when I went to work, they explained to me in personnel, you will never discuss your pay with coworkers or anyone else, because if you do, you will not have a job. So no one ever discussed their pay, and salary raises were given at different times. In other words, they didn't give them all, let's say every fall, they'll evaluate us and give out raises. No, they gave them out periodically. I might get one in a year and a half, and it might be 3 years. And I did not know when the others were getting theirs. I did not know how much they were getting. I had no way of knowing. I would ask, but I could not find out. They refused to tell me how I compared with my peers. And that was just so devastating. And I got home the next day morning. I told my husband, I must file a charge with the Equal Employment Commission unless you object. But I said, I will warn you, if I start, we will be in this for 8 years, because I knew it was not a quick solution. In corporations, they have much more money than an individual like myself. They can spend me out, they'll wait me out, and they'll wear me out. But it actually took 9 years.
Okay, so I have to ask you, do you know today who actually put that note, the infamous note, in your mailbox?
I do not, but the thing about it, the Gadsden plant, the salary checks came out of Akron. So the only place that someone could have known or found out was in my superior's desk or the plant manager's. And it could have been, well, actually, after I filed the charge and Goodyear was notified and all of the repercussions started, I got in the mail a copy of the last evaluation sheet of the tire run. So whoever gave me that note evidently had gotten access to that sheet. And that was the only thing that my attorney had at trial other than the pay history. We couldn't get anything else. And in fact, the judge asked for my personnel file, and my boss told him on the stand that he thought the company had burned them. And the judge said, let me explain the law to you. You're required to keep those until a case is settled, once a case is filed. But they didn't have it. It wasn't produced at trial. They had nothing against me other than the people that I had worked for. And all they were trying to say was that the other guys was better experienced than I was, but a lot of them didn't have as much experience as I did.
Okay, so I mean, I have shivers from this story because, first of all, what an act of bravery and courage. Where did that, I mean, I know you woke up and just said, I can't live with this. This is so unconscionable. You had to take on Goodyear, which is remarkable. Your family supporting you.
They did.
Attorney.
They did.
It took 9 years, David and Goliath situation, you know, which is really incredible. So you win the case. Tell us what happens.
That was amazing. Oh, that was so awesome, because the case was tried in my home county in Alabama, which is a poor rural type place people live. And the law firm that represented me, though, I was so fortunate to get John Goldfarb. He was very good. He had a great reputation. He was young, and he carried my case, and his firm carried my case all the way through on a contingent basis, which meant if I had won, they would have got 50% of whatever I would have gotten. But really, at that stage, for me, once I filed that charge, it was about right. Is this the right thing to do? Yes. Can I let it go? No. Will I give up? No. I told my family up in the beginning, I said, I will not give up or quit. I said, I will not. Once I start, I'm in it till the end, because it was the right thing to do. And I know that more than ever today, because actually the Ledbetter case was the tip of the iceberg for other people around the world to wake up. Am I getting the rightful pay? Am I being treated equitably and fairly in my pay? Because this goes on for the rest of your life. I've been retired now, I guess, over 20 years, and my retirement is nothing what it should be. My Social Security is not what it should be. And I struggle.
And by the way, you come from this small town and all of a sudden you are in the spotlight. How did that feel? I mean, how did you feel all of a sudden being so visible and actually not only fighting for yourself, but for all of those, you know, other women coming up behind you?
That was an awesome responsibility. And I'll tell you, it was an awesome thing to get adjusted to, because I had never traveled a lot. I'd never flown a lot. I had a few times, but not a lot. And when that started immediately after the verdict came out in May of '07, my attorney and I flew into Washington, D.C., and there I was with all of these microphones and cords, and I've never seen so many cameras right down at my feet. And they had a press conference, and then I testified before the Congressman George Miller's committee in the House for the first time. I testified twice in the House, twice in the Senate, and that was an awesome thing to do. And I looked at the people on television to figure out how I should dress and what I should wear. And along the way, people would give me tips and helps along the way.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, one thing you wore was confidence and belief from within. And I know that that exuded, you know, to everyone that was listening, watching, seeing, and feeling. That is for sure. So tell us what happened and how it elevated to the Supreme Court and your relationship with RBG, the late RBG.
That was awesome. Oh, she was a special person. And she was just so inspiring. And I got to meet her in person in November of 2010. And she was so small and tiny, but she was that voice just carried so much weight and so much authority. And she knew that law. And she was a picky person. When it came to the law, she was going to endorse my book and write a foreword, but she refused when we had a little technicality in the Supreme Court case. When we got there, I stated in the book that my attorney had 10 minutes to wrap up. He had the last 10 minutes was allocated. He got 3 minutes to speak, not 10. And then the justices could ask questions or wrap up. But she was so picky about the law, my attorney did not even catch that. And he's very detailed also. But she just wouldn't sign the book because law students are reading it, they're studying it, and she did not want to mislead anyone. But she believed in if it was right. And when she read her response and she challenged Congress, she said, the ball is in your court. It's up to you to change this grave injustice back, which they took it up almost immediately. And when they did, I went with it. And I walked the halls of Congress to get people to support it.
There's a line that I just want to read from RBG. The court does not comprehend or is indifferent to the insidious way in which women can be victims of pay discrimination. And this was how she stood front and center and strong together in response to the Ledbetter versus Goodyear case. So I think that, you know, all of this was moving forward. What happened? Why did it not get passed at the time? What was the disconnect?
On the bill?
Yes.
Well, the first time when it went to the Supreme Court, 5 justices voted against us. And we had Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito had just gone on the bench. And as I testified before Ted Kennedy's committee later in the Senate, they had charts on what they said and how they had ruled. And it was nothing like the same individuals. And Chief Justice Roberts had stated he would call balls and strikes, and he would follow precedent in the interpretation of the laws. Well, the interpretation of my case should have gone on through because they had always been ruled on based on paycheck accrual. But they found the technicality that they could get around and disallow it. But it couldn't stand because that was not the right thing to do. And the Supreme and the Congress, with Justice Ginsburg prodding and pointing it out, they understood it too. And one of the things I'm so proud of, that the bill was sponsored and co-sponsored by both parties. And it was finally voted into law. Only the second time through and became the law of the land. And that's an amazing feat to be an 18 month to get that bill passed. That was awesome. But people flew me to Washington and put me in a hotel, and I would walk the halls of Congress and meet with all of the House representatives. And then I moved up to the Senate, and I do NPR radios, and I do speaking on the radio, call-in shows early in the morning, late in the evening, because it was so critical to get the word out how important this was. And I never got any money. When I lost in the Supreme Court, that was it. The chairman, Miller, said that he hoped that it would be retroactive and I could get my award, but it didn't. And my attorneys immediately explained to me, it never happens. It sounds good, but it never happens. That person moves on without anything. And that's what happened to me. But I have been so blessed with the people I've met and the changes that this has caused in their incomes, their retirements, and their families. And the men understand it. When you start talking to them about their wives, their mothers, and there were a lot of those young men in Congress that when I would tell my story, I had 5 minutes usually. I'd tell them a short story, like when I testified in the House. They would have tears run down their face and talk about their mother working 2 jobs to send them through law school so they could be where they were that day. They understood. They got it.
It makes it personal. It makes it personal. Your mother, your sister,
right,
your friend, your girlfriend, we all have a very important woman in our life. And so it makes it a very personal story. It's not about someone out there. It is very personal. It is someone put that. And so President Obama comes in and signs the bill into law. That was a monumental moment. And
it was.
Tell us about that moment. And also you wore red that day. Why did you wear red?
My daughter, as times went on, of course, my money was very limited, and she bought me that jacket to wear to an award. The first award and the first big speaking place I went was to the National Women's Law Center in Washington's annual dinner. They was honoring me and Nancy Pelosi, and I had that jacket to wear for that. And then when I went to the White House, I chose to wear it again because it was such a dynamic color. And the women were still in the red. We were still in the red. We were not getting our equal pay. The women were not getting rightful earnings. And so I wore that red to represent that. And it was so critical. And my daughter bought that jacket. I'm hoping to get it into the Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls one of these days.
Well, okay, we're going to work on that. I want to get that into Seneca Falls. So that is a project I volunteer to take on. Let's make that happen. Okay, so I'm all in on that one. I think that is a representation of equality, and I think that we need to celebrate that. Let's get to the big stuff happening today. A feature film being created about your incredible journey, where you've been, where you are, and most importantly, the legacy that you are leaving for so many other women.
I'm just so excited because this film will live on, because it will help to lay the groundwork for the future generations, seeing this film and what it's like when a family pulls together and the people support them. And I had so much support across this nation, people writing to Congress and calling Congress and sending emails and marching. They marched out in the hot boiling sun with us, and they watched in the cold. It was so awesome that the people, I mean, I just wish I could send everybody a check to pay them for doing all that, because a lot of them, their time was gone. They tell me, my time was gone. I know exactly what you've gone through. I did the same thing. And so many of them was hurting so much in retirement. They couldn't pay their rent and keep up. And it wasn't because some of those women had not had 30 years as a secretary, some of them even as a nurse or a school teacher, but they were not paid the rightful pay. And we outlive our spouses on average by 10 years, and then they're gone and we don't have the access to their income. And it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. And there's so many people that are struggling just to get by.
Well, so today is International Women's Day. And so, what are your wishes? What do you hope for that, women across the world can know and be comforted with? And really, what do you wish the changes to be?
They need to be treated equitably and fairly. It's not a gift. It's not anything that's given to them. It's something that they earn it. They earn it. They're earning it. Now, if they don't live up to the job classification, they don't perform, then there's a way you could see. Goodyear could have gotten rid of me because I lived in an at-will state, and they could have told me anytime to go home. They didn't need me, no reason, but they didn't. But they said after the trial that I was a poor performer, was why I got less money. But I continued to do that job, and there was not another woman that kept that manager's job like that. And I got moved up to being from a supervisor to an area manager and finished third out of all of the managers in the engineering classes. So I took over the maintenance people on my shift. So it was quite, I had proven my capabilities. I've proven my ability, but it's around the world, because the first invitation I had after Obama signed the bill was to Rome, Italy. They had the same problem. And my attorney in Washington and I went to Rome, Italy, and spent 6 days. And the Italians would get so excited hearing me talk, because even though I was talking the Southern drawl and they didn't understand it, and I didn't speak Italian, but the interpreter, and between all of us, they'd get so excited talking about it because they knew what I was talking about. They understood it.
Well, I think that the word equal is a universal word. And so no matter what, equal is equal is equal in every language, in every country, and for women around the globe. We all have earned the right for equal pay, for equal work. You leading the way. You are such an icon for equal pay, for fair pay. Do you have a role model who inspires you?
Well, of course, during these past few years, it was Justice Ginsburg. And she corresponded with me. From time to time, she'd send me a booklet that she and I was on the front cover. She said, I think you might want this and might like to see it. And then she sent me a copy of her husband's cookbook when it came out and wrote me a note with it. And that was so wonderful. And then she would from time to time send me an article or write me a note. And my lawyer told me, he said, forget whatever she's sending you. Said, keep those envelopes. I never knew anyone to get a correspondence from a Supreme Court justice, but she was just so awesome and so caring. She cared. And when I met her, she shared with me the first 3 jobs she had. And the first one was extremely hard to get, but they told her right up front, we'll not pay you what we pay the men, because they have a family. And she had a family. And or someone said because she had a husband. I mean, they're just not right. There's just nothing that can make it right. And when I was looking for work back in the day, getting a job, that's when the classifieds read men's jobs, women. And that's not right either. It's a job. And the description and the person's education and background and their capabilities, that's how they get the job. And then the money should be there regardless of their sex, their color, their nationality, or whatever.
Well, I have to say that you are awesome. And I always say when purpose meets passion, you're unstoppable. And Lilly, you are unstoppable. You are my role model, my inspiration of hope, of possibility, of sometimes having to step out of our comfort zone, and for you getting very uncomfortable, but leading the way. That takes courage, that takes bravery. And even on the inside, if you're not sure that you want to do it, you followed your heart and you did it because you knew that someone had to lead the way for change. So we are so grateful for you for paving the way for so many others. And we are going to get the red jacket into Seneca. For sure, because red represents hope, light, love,
Right.
change, and most importantly, Lilly Ledbetter, it represents equal, and that is what we need to push forward. So thank you so much, and what a wonderful, wonderful inspiration on International Women's Day.
Thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful day to be celebrating too. This is a special, special day.
Every day should be Women's Day, not
You're
just
right.
one day, right? Every day.
You're right.
And that's how we push forward. So thank you so much.